Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pensky File. We're here continuing our Let's Watch of Star Trek The Next Generation. We're up to episode 24 of season 1. This one is called We'll Always Have Paris. This one was directed by Robert Becker, written by Deborah Dean Davis and Hannah Louise Shearer. It aired way back on May 2nd, 1988. For a quick plot breakdown, this episode has the crew responding to a distress call from Dr. Paul Mannheim. While the crew must deal with the results of Mannheim's haywire experiments with time, Captain Picard must deal with his former lover, Janice, who is also Mannheim's wife. It's just going to be me talking about this one. Some quick thoughts right after this.
Interesting move, sir. What technique was that?
The technique of a desperate man.
Interesting move, sir. What technique was that?
The technique of a desperate man.
Captain, what was that?
Picard to bridge.
Captain.
Number 1. Did something unusual just occur on the bridge?
Yes, sir. We experienced some kind of loop where everything repeats itself.
Here too. I'm on my way.
Okay, we're back. So let's get into We'll Always Have Paris. As I said before, this is just going to be me, so it might be a quicker episode, but I'm going to try to run through my thoughts just as quickly, as efficiently as possible here. So what do we think about We'll Always Have Paris? This is, I think it's weird that it came after not Skin of Evil, after Conspiracy, which we watched, or which is going to be coming up, actually, revealing a little bit of me going out of order here, but in Conspiracy, the upcoming episode after this one, the show does not feel like Star Trek, and this show, We'll Always Have Paris, feels very much like a Star Trek The Next Generation episode. I'm pretty content with this one. It's kind of a strange show in that I didn't remember much of it, and after watching it, I'm kind of surprised by how little I remembered, because there's a lot of memorable scenes, as I wrote down a couple of them. The only thing I really did remember about this one was the holodeck being used to recreate that cafe in Paris where Picard sits with, I think her name is Janice. Is Janice or Janice? Something like that. That's the main thing that I remembered from this show. And some of the other stuff that I didn't remember, but it seems like I should, because it seems more memorable than it obviously is to me. There's Picard fencing, which is the entire opening, which is kind of a nice little scene. There's the Mannheim effect, which is the weird time loop that they go through. And I honestly did not remember that. And I've seen this episode before, and I didn't remember the doubling where Riker, Picard, and Data are in the turbo lift, and they run into doubles of themselves that are a few seconds behind. There's the weird planetoid shot, which I don't remember, is kind of unique. The Enterprise at the end is orbiting a giant asteroid where this Dr. Mannheim is doing his experiments, and I didn't remember that shot, and it's kind of cool. You don't see much of that in Star Trek The Next Generation, shots like that. They're usually around a planet or a sun or something, but this was kind of a unique thing. There is Data dodging more lasers, as he did in Home Soil. So Data, again, does a little bit more acrobatic laser dodging in this one. And there are the Data fixing the time loop problem, and where there are 3 Datas all in the same room talking to each other, which is extremely memorable, and I do not remember that happening whatsoever. So I think that's my weird issue with this show, We'll Always Have Paris. It's a pretty good episode, in my opinion, but for some reason it's not memorable. So it's kind of a weird no man's land, and I actually liked it. And it's hard to tell if I liked it because I haven't seen it in a while and I don't have as many preconceived notions going in as I do for the other shows. But I think it stands pretty well with the best of the first season, as we're closing in on the ending to the first season here with only a couple episodes left. But I thought this one was pretty enjoyable.
Incidentally, Captain, the effects of the time distortions are now being felt in the Illicom system.
Bridge. In the past decade, Mannheim has turned some vague theories into a practical application.
Yes, but without his help, I'm not sure we'll be able to pose any intelligent questions, let alone come up with any solutions.
Incidentally, Captain, the effects of the time distortions are now being felt in the Illicom system.
It's us before we step into the turbo lift. It's happening again.
I feel no disorientation, nor do I.
What was that?
I believe what could be termed as the Mannheim effect is becoming more pronounced.
This is where we started. If we are us.
Oh, we are us, sir. But they are also us. So indeed, we are both us.
So to go through it, Captain Picard is fencing at the beginning, and he runs into this weird time blip where things sort of repeat themselves. So they'll say like, well done, Captain, and then it sort of rewinds and the person says, well done, Captain, again, and everyone notices this. And they receive a distress call from this Dr. Mannheim, who is working on this asteroid. They go over, rescue him. His experiment has caused him some medical problems, and Picard is familiar with his wife. Picard was in love with this woman 22 years ago, they mention, and he left her on the figurative altar, I guess, where he left her at this cafe that he recreates on the holodeck without saying goodbye. And she moved on with her life and married this doctor. Picard became a captain of the Enterprise. Yada, yada, yada. They meet each other 22 years later. And these experiments that this Mannheim have been doing are causing drastic effects across the universe. And the crew has to fix it. Data fixes it by plugging some antimatter into something else. And then that fixes the problem. Picard says goodbye to Janice, who goes off with her husband, Mannheim. And that's the end of the episode. So it doesn't really sound like much. And I guess the shocking thing about this show is that, just like I mentioned in Code of Honor was written under duress, where it was written in 2 days because of just scripting issues. So Code of Honor was written in 2 days, and it really felt that way. It felt like a first draft. We'll Always Have Paris fared a little bit better, but it was impacted by the 1988 Writers Guild strike. So because of the strike, the script was written in only 5 days, and when it was filmed, it was actually discovered to be somewhat incomplete. So they were writing basically up until the time of shooting. And it does have more than double the amount of time that Code of Honor had to be written, but I do feel like it's a million times better than Code of Honor was. And Code of Honor wasn't actually all that bad, but I think that this show was actually pretty good, all things considered. I was certainly surprised to figure out that they had written it right up to the edge, because it does feel like a rough draft in some places, especially in how Picard interacts with the Mannheims. The romantic sub-story seems to come in kind of awkwardly because this Mannheim has created this science situation where it seems like the universe is sort of collapsing. He's caused this time loop to happen, and, hundreds of light years away, I think they say in the episode that people are feeling the impacts from it, and it seems like he's really damaging some kind of, time thing going on with the universe. And in the middle of all this, science plot going on, Picard is giving googly eyes to this Janice, and they have this weird sort of interaction. They're talking to each other as her husband is dying in the sick bay. He's not really dying, but he's extremely, he's not doing very well at all. And it's just kind of awkward that they shove these two plots together. It feels like a rough draft in that sense, in that there's a lot of good story ideas, but it doesn't feel like they really fit all together. Like another polish of the script probably would have had things flow more nicely into each other. They do feel a little bit haphazard here, just how Picard has to deal with this problem while there's a much larger problem going on. And that's not to say that I didn't like the plot strands, because I did. I thought the Picard romance was pretty good. I thought the time loop thing was really interesting. They do this one shot where I mentioned before they're getting on the turbo lift, Picard, Riker, and Data, and they open the door and they see their doubles who are about to get on the turbo lift with them. And then the camera cuts to the people on the outside, their perspective. So we started off with the original three on the turbo lift in their perspective. They see the doors open and they see their doubles, the doors shut, and we go back to the doubles outside. So it's kind of a cool sci-fi thing to do, but they shift. You're no longer with the characters that you were. You're with the same characters, but they're different people, if that makes any sense. So it was a neat little shot thing to do. I thought that plot was okay, although they don't really take it seriously enough, it doesn't seem. This Mannheim seems like he's like a mad scientist tinkering with the creation of the universe or something. And it seems like it's having drastic side effects, and the crew does not seem particularly worried about it, which I think is a problem plot-wise for this one. Just it ties into how these strands don't really come together all that much. They're focusing on the Picard love story, but if they wanted to focus on that, I feel like they should have de-emphasized the science problem, make it like a more minor issue. I know that maybe that wouldn't add as much drama to the show, but it would make more sense as to why Picard can have all these weird conversations with this girl, Janice, who he left behind, especially since her husband is laying dying in sick bay. They haven't seen each other in 22 years, and the fabric of time is being torn apart by this guy's experiments.
Computer, this is Captain Picard.
Holodeck 3 is clear.
Location Paris. Café des Artistes. As it appeared 22 years ago. April the 9th, 1500 hours, 3 o'clock. Warm spring day.
Program complete.
But outside of that, it was fine. You know, I think that it's a great Picard episode. It does a lot to expand on his character. He comes across really well. Patrick Stewart's acting is fantastic. It might be some of his best work in the first season. His actress co-star, the guest co-star, is not really as good. She's fine. Her outfit's a little wishy-washy, but you spend a lot of the episode wondering if you can actually see her tit through her shirt. She's wearing like an open-sided shirt or something, and you spend a lot of time being like, is something going to happen here? But anyway, the love story is pretty good between those two. It's good for Picard's character building in the show. I enjoyed that. We've gone through a lot of these first season episodes without Picard actually being involved all that much, and I thought that this was a nice change of pace as we're rounding towards the finish line. I like the Data dodging lasers. That was kind of nice. Although it was weird that Mannheim just forgot about the lasers that shoot people when you enter his lab. It seems like that's the main security feature he'd have to remember. Not the gates that is made of lasers that you can't walk through, but the lasers that will shoot you the minute you step foot in the lab. It seemed like it would have been the thing that Mannheim should remember, but he did not. And I like the fencing thing. You know, that's kind of I don't think they ever go back to Picard fencing at all in any of the shows, but it's a nice character building moment. Script-wise, it's showing that Picard is a intellectual fighter more than a brute strength. Where Kirk would have been the brute strength and just sort of beaten this guy through sheer ability. Picard is a little bit more crafty. The sport they're doing, fencing, is much more of a sort of, I don't really know that much about it, but it's more of, I see it more of as like an intellectual sort of parrying, sort of diplomacy kind of fighting, if you know what I mean. It's a lot of parrying and making a quick strike and things like that, and just sort of like breaking through someone's defenses, which is much more of a Picard thing. If this were Kirk, he would be boxing or wrestling. And I thought that was a nice touch. It's a nice way to delicately show the character, which the show has not been great at doing. They do a lot of on-the-nose exposition. But Picard this time actually gets to do some acting. The script is not banging you over the head. You get to draw a little inference from it. It's nice. It's good. It's a well-written little scene. And all in all, I think my overall opinion of the show is that I'm surprised I don't remember it, because I do think it's a pretty good show. Even though it is kind of a ripoff of Casablanca. And they mentioned the Blue Parrot Cafe from the film. It is mentioned by Picard at the end. And it was actually a pretty nice little ending. I think a lot of people get to shine in this one. Troy has something to do in this episode. It has a nice little scene with Riker, Picard, and Troy at the end talking about where they're going to go on shore leave. It felt very much like a Next Generation episode. It was a little bit saccharine, but I don't think it was bad enough to hold against it. It certainly reminded me in the crew interactions of a much later episode.
I've only been there once, but they've got this great club. I don't remember the name of it. They serve those blue concoctions.
It's across the square from the Zanzimen's dance palace.
called the Blue Parrot Cafe. And you're buying.
And that's very good. Let me see. So let's get into the reception for this. We'll talk about what some TV critics actually thought. Monica Erica Green reviewed the episode on behalf of Trek Nation in September 2007. She compared certain elements of the episode to Casablanca and the series finale All Good Things. These included the ending where time distortions caused data to be replicated 3 times in We'll Always Have Paris, which I talked about, and compared to a similar situation with the 3 Picards in All Good Things. Overall, she thought that the episode was better than she had recalled previously. So I kind of agree with that. Jamal Episokan at his website Jammers Reviews, okay, I know Jammers Reviews, I didn't know that was that guy's name, describes the episode as too simple, especially the ending, which he said, they give Data a canister and he sticks it into a hall of mirrors and the problem is solved. I agree with that. I think it, on a purely mechanical plot sort of structure, that is a problem. The scene itself is cool, just because there are 3 Datas talking to each other as they're trying to figure out what they need to do, which was clever. It wasn't just that they're mirroring each other, but they're actually interacting with each other and figuring out the problem by the combined brain power of the 3 androids. So I didn't mind it too much. It is kind of silly, and he spends a lot of time just dramatically holding a canister before he sticks it in the Hall of Mirrors, but whatever. Zach Hanlon, reviewing the episode for the AV Club in 2010, said he enjoyed the time blips in the episode, that he wasn't a fan of the romance between Janice and Picard. He also felt there wasn't much follow-up on Mannheim's experiments and that he seemed to be left to cause an even more serious accident in the future. Yeah, which I do agree with. The more I read these reviews of the critics, I do think I agree with Zach Hanlon out of all the critics. I seem to line up in opinion-wise with him the most, and certainly in those 2. Keith DeCandido watched the episode for Tor.com in 2011. He thought that Michelle Phillips was incredibly radiant. And I always sometimes disagree with Keith DeCandido. I agree with him a lot, but sometimes he has points that I don't really agree with. That one, Michelle Phillips, I didn't think she was that strong. He said that there's nothing I can point to at this episode to say is wrong, but it's one of the more forgettable episodes, and gave it a score 4 out of 10. I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that last sentiment completely. It's a weird show. I'm extremely, I know I keep harping on it, but I'm extremely surprised I don't remember much of this episode. I just remember the cafe, and the cafe isn't even really that big of a deal in the whole thing. Picard goes there in the beginning for a couple minutes, and then he goes there in the end for a minute. And outside of that, it's a lot of the time blips and Data on the planet, which I didn't remember at all. Didn't remember the time blip cloning. Didn't remember any of that. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. It's pretty good. I think it's probably going to be in my top 5. I'll have to think about it a little bit more, but we're getting to that point where I will be ranking the top 5 and bottom 5 episodes. And at this point, I think this is a top 5. It's a 3 out of 5 for me. You can definitely see the rough draft sort of problems coming through, but I think it does pretty good despite that problem of being written so quickly. It feels like a Next Generation episode. The 2 female writers did a really good job. Hannah Louise Shearer seems to be a pretty strong writer. I don't know how long she sticks around, but she's certainly involved in the first 2 seasons. Might just be the first one, but she's excellent. The 2 writers did really well. The direction was fine. I didn't really notice anything that would have blown me away. But I think this was an excellent step in the right direction for the Next Generation, and I look forward. The show is slowly going to develop in this way, and it's well worth the effort that we put into this first season so far. So we're going to get to Conspiracy after this. I think Modi Operandus is going to join us to talk about Conspiracy, and after that, it's just the neutral zone, right? Yeah, and then we're done. So cool. So 3 out of 5 for this one. Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed the content, if you're watching it on iTunes, a like or a comment would be appreciated. If you're on iTunes and you enjoyed the show, leaving a review or a rating is extra helpful. Thank you very much, guys, for listening, and we'll see you in a couple days with Conspiracy.